Hi,
You got it.
everyone. Welcome to another great episode of ANOKHI Uncensored. I'm your host, Raj Girn, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with one of Canada's preeminent talents, my girl, Supinder Wraich, the star of the popular CBC series Allegiance, which is getting ready to launch its third season on Wednesday, January the 7th at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on CBC Gem, followed by broadcast at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on CBC TV. Sweetheart, welcome to the show. So much has happened in your life since the first time you and I chatted a number of years ago. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Raj. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's wild. I can't, in a way, I can't believe we're at season three already. It feels so fast.
Oh my God. And I cannot wait to dive in and share all of the magnificent things that are happening in the new season. But before we do that, for those people who haven't followed your journey, I want to take a moment to give them the opportunity for a sneak peek into your professional journey pre-allegiance. Let's
Sure.
share that a little bit with people. Where was that defining moment for you when you knew that storytelling and acting was something you felt compelled to pursue? Let's start there.
Um, I think I would say it was probably sometime in university. I don't know about you, but that's sort of the time where we're asked to figure out, are you going to go to school? Are you going to start working? Who are you going to become as an adult? And I remember being at the University of Ottawa, and I was studying business at the time, and I had always wanted to act. I think it was because I was the children of people who had immigrated, and so I grew up in front of the TV. The TV was it was a babysitter, it was a therapist, it was a friend,
It
it
was.
was a parent, it was all of those things. And so there was some element of just having so much of that projected towards me that there was a curiosity about it. And I ended up in this acting class, and I don't know about you, but the family that I grew up in, because my parents spent so much time working, there were very few times, I could probably count them on my hand, where they asked how I was feeling about my emotions or about my inner life. And so I ended up in this acting class, and I had this monologue about this young woman um, who was, I think, just talking about something that she was thinking and feeling. And it was the first time I had ever experienced that particular thing out loud in front of a group of people. And it wasn't even my personal emotions. Well, I guess it was my emotions, but it wasn't my words, it wasn't my writing. And there was a part of me that I felt like I could be honest about through this other young woman's text. And I remember thinking that I don't know what this thing is, but in order to feel alive, in order to feel seen, in order to fulfill something I have inside myself, this is the thing I got to pursue. And then, in terms of a career, I think I was studying out in Ottawa. I auditioned for something, I think, within the Ministry of Defense, like a corporate video, and they paid me. It's like $400, I think, for like 2 hours of work. And as a university student, I was like, what is this? Like, I got over $100 for it's like, this is better than being a doctor. Anyways, I could see it. And then, obviously, you navigate the gigs where you don't get paid, and the hundreds of auditions where you don't get the part. And so it was just like pounding the pavement, booking role after role after role after role until Allegiance and Sabrina came along.
Oh my gosh, and so much to unpack with what you said, but I just want to ask you one question before we dive into Allegiance. As a South Asian woman in the entertainment industry, your journey hasn't been a typical one. It never is. What were some of the biggest hurdles you faced before, you started to get the momentum? Because you've had a trajectory of a decade of many, many TV shows that you've been on. Can you share that with everyone?
Yeah, I mean, like the hurdles are difficult, especially as an actor, because you never really know why you don't get the part. Nobody calls you and tells you the truth, right? There's always, you hear, oh, well, we went in a different direction. And then you watch it, and oftentimes I've watched shows that I've auditioned for and thought, yeah, that's the person that deserved to book that part. She's great in it. She's perfect for it, and it makes sense. So you understand it in that way. I think for me I would say two hurdles. The one was just trusting my own voice, and it takes a long time, I think, for anybody really to figure out what their voice is, and what your particular truth and honesty, and integrity in standing in all of that you are looks like. Because I think that's why we watch people act, right? We watch people be courageous and do things that we don't have either the strength or the capacity or the emotional capacity to do in our own lives, and that's why we watch other people do it for us in a way. And so the person doing it really has to know themselves, I think, in order for that projection to feel honest and accurate. So I think that's an ongoing hurdle within the industry, because I think as a South Asian woman, my particular experience asked me to hide so much of myself growing up. Hide my language, hide my food, hide my culture, hide the smells associated with my culture, hide my clothing, hide so many things. And so it really, that sort of opening up those pieces and places to show them publicly, that took a lot of work. And then I would say the other hurdle was navigating the industry itself. So going back to that thing of you never know why you don't get a part, it's, I'm sure there were times I auditioned for something, and I remember one particular time in particular where I got the call from my agent. I had auditioned for something, and she said, well, you're the director's #1 pick. And I said, okay, so do I have the job? And she said, well, you don't have the job yet, but I've never seen the director not get their #1 pick when it goes to the broadcaster. But at the end of the day, the broadcaster has the choice to choose whoever they want to choose. And so I said, okay, well, let's see. Let's wait and see. But in my mind, I had gotten this part. And then sure enough, like a day later, 2 days later, I get the call that it didn't go to me. And so, and I didn't know why. And so in this particular instance, I waited and I waited some months or whatever for that episode to come out and watch who booked that guest star, because the guest star was to be a love interest for the lead of the show. And sure enough, it was a Caucasian woman, it was a white woman. And so that particular thing, for me, it was a hurdle that I wasn't sure how I was going to overcome, because it wasn't anything of my particular doing or undoing or anything that I could do. That was systemic, and facing that, because I think so much of my early career, there was a naivete to it. It's like, no, I'm not getting the part not because I'm Indian. It couldn't be because I'm Indian. It's never made a difference in my experience before. It has to be because I'm not talented enough. That was the story I was telling myself. And so eventually, when I had to face that piece of the circumstances I was in, and I couldn't do anything to get out of them, those two, I would say, are the most significant hurdles.
And it's interesting because it's that particular one that you mentioned last, which is the reason why you are in Allegiance, which is so serendipitous. We've seen you bring depth, nuance, and emotional truth to every role you've taken over the past 10 years of your career, with Allegiance perhaps being your crowning glory, from my opinion, because it's the longest that you've had, now into our third season. Can you take us back to when the show first came on your radar? I'm really interested in this, Supinder. What about it captured your interest to take it on? Was it the fact that serendipity had now come calling for exactly who you are as an identity?
No, I don't think it was that particular thing, Raj. I think it was, it's really interesting, because when Allegiance was casting and looking for their lead, initially Sabrina was written as much younger than I am. And so I remember reading the casting and thinking, because at the same time I was also shooting Sort of. And Aksa is, she has a lot more parts of herself that I was able to show in that role that are varied from Sabrina's. In a way, Sabrina's a bit more of an ingenue than Aksa was. Aksa was a bit jaded, frankly, I think, in some of the best ways. And so when Sabrina came along, you know, I had had my son. At the time, I think he was about 4 months. And Sabrina seemed like an ingenue, and it didn't seem like it was my hit. I was like, oh, I don't know that I can play that particular thing anymore. And so then there was the added element that my friend Anar Ali had written this show. And so when I went to audition for it, what really drew me was this relationship Sabrina had to her father. Because I understood that, because I had written this show called The 410 that was about a young woman and her relationship with her father and his fall from grace. And, you know, this idea and this theme of, you know, children paying for the sins of their parents, and this young woman paying for the sins of her father in the way that he was perceived in the public eye, and then her going into this organization in his shadow and then trying to figure out what was the truth. That relationship and those circumstances are really what drew me to this story. And so when I went to audition for it, because, you know, acting is so interesting, because it's like, where do you anchor yourself in it? Because I think I could have easily gotten lost on, I'm too old to play this particular character, and then just said, I don't think so. But because I could hold on to that piece, and then, you know, when I went and auditioned and tested against Stephen Lobo and everything he brought in terms of playing Ajit's character, and then also auditioning with Enrico Colantoni, and it was just, we were just playing and talking to each other in a way through these characters. And so there was a beauty of the auditioning process with these really talented actors that anchored me in this world, in this show, and I think that's how I landed it. And then, funny enough, because I think actors, we do this to ourselves all the time, we talk ourselves out of parts. They changed her age. That was it. They just aged her up a little bit more to make it make sense. And so here we are.
And here we are. So, Allegiance is a police crime thriller that dives deep into questions of identity, justice, loyalty, and the very human cost of navigating multiple cultures at once, which makes this show quite unique. You know, I have to share with you that because there hasn't been storytelling on mainstream Canadian television that so deeply underscores the South Asian narrative, I found this to be incredible. And I feel that it really spoke to audiences. It's speaking to audiences because here we are at the eve of season 3 launching. Can you share from your perspective what's so special about the way Allegiance tackles this subject matter?
Well, you know what, I think we're also, I find ourselves in this period of time where we're lucky that we have a show like Allegiance, and we also have a show like Late Bloomer. And they do two very different things. I feel like Late Bloomer is very much centered around the Punjabi experience in terms of, you know, what does it mean to grow up in a Punjabi family, and the food and the culture and the weddings and the fights. And it does such a beautiful, honest job. And Jasmeet has done such a great job at, you know, making it funny and relatable at the same time. And I think that there is a hunger for that particular content that comes from a singular voice that really showcases who we are. And then Allegiance does something different, where we're a police procedural, and although Sabrina's family and her experience is one element of the series, it's not centered around it. The show centers around a story of the week, and we really wholeheartedly dive into those characters and their worlds. And it just so happens that this particular girl happens to be Punjabi. And for so many of us, first generation, second generation, sometimes I feel like we don't want to have to explain ourselves. We don't want to have to tell people why we're wearing a sari, or, you know, a bit like, it's just like, this is just a piece of who we are. And then we're also a doctor, we're also a police officer, we're also this thing. And then we go out into the world with our multitude of selves and just exist. And I think that that's what the show allows us to do, and in a way feels so progressive, because her ethnicity is not the center of this show. The story of the procedural is the center of this show, and she just happens to be Punjabi. And so many of us just happen to be Punjabi police officers, doctors, or whatever. And then we have other lives and other parts of our lives that aren't centered around this particular place that we come from in India. And so I think that's why the show has been so successful within the South Asian community, because in a way it's not centered around South Asianness.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because anyone that is a Canadian can relate to what's happening here, because there are elements of duality in all of us, right? The culture that we are brought up in the outer world, and the culture that we're brought, actually three, the culture we're brought up in, you know, our homes. But then there's this kind of coming to terms of what all that means as an individual identity as well. And I do feel that there is this very soft layering of that in this story that is enough for us to feel there is proper representation, but enough for it to feel universal in the way it's been presented. What are your thoughts there? Because usually it's like, you know, church and state, it's either all cultural and deeply cultural, and understanding the nuances of the story, you have to be that culture, or it's not really, you know, referencing the culture. This sits in a fine line of being able to do both authentically. Your thoughts?
Oh, Raj, I love that idea of the third self that you
Yes.
presented. I think it's so true, because I think it's so easy to say, well, you know, I'm the person that my family expects me to be, and the person that society expects me to be. But what about the person that's sort of coming out of both as I navigate myself?
Yes.
And I think that this is, you know, and forgive me if I get too meta here, but I do think that this is where the success of the show lies, is that in that gray area. I'll give you an example. It's interesting because I remember having a conversation with Stephanie. The first season, Stephanie Morgenstern, who was our showrunner, and I said, when I booked the part, I was trying to picture, and we were trying to build Sabrina, and I said, well, you know, I think that if Sabrina's father is a Sardarji, then we should probably give her long hair, because I don't think that she would have cut her hair. And Steph, funny enough, she pushed back and said, no, I don't think so. She said, I think that Sabrina lives in a world and has friends that, you know, that we don't have to define her so particularly, because she's figuring herself out. And so the beauty of the show is that internally we're having these conversations about visual representation and nuance, and then we're also doing it within our stories. That because we're a police procedural, and we have a victim and a perpetrator, we're not looking at the victim and saying, well, this person was clearly in the right and the perpetrator was in the wrong. And we're looking at both sides of the story and saying, okay, what is the nuance here? Why did this person commit this action? Or why did this person have this action committed against them? And what are the results of this? And what is the purpose of this? And who is to be charged, and even is the charging of them fair? And it might be legal, it might be the next legal step, but it might not necessarily be fair from a humanist standpoint. And because the law defines what is right and wrong, but the police officer doesn't. And so because we have that nuance, and you take it back to the building of the character and saying, well, Canadian culture expects me to be this, and Indian culture expects me to be this, and for each person, what is the individual that rises in between that? Like we all know the Sardarjis taking shots at the bar. And it's like, how is this person navigating or, opening up like the beer with a kara? And it's just like, but to each his own. And if that is how you're navigating your religion and your expectations and your friendships, then that is individual to you as an individual. And so I think that there is a real sort of third Sabrina that's emerging, and when we identify with and we see ourselves inside her.
So, just to kind of maybe go that step deeper with her character, what has been the biggest challenge of portraying this role emotionally, psychologically, or even physically, knowing that you yourself are you as the actor? And then here is the role of someone where many parallels can be made. Like, what is your process of knowing where you are you and this is the character, and you have to stay true to the character when it's very difficult, since you're also playing aspects that are very relatable for your own lived experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It happens all the time. It happens in so many different ways because, I think there's this element of, and maybe there's a perception from the outside that when you're playing a role, it's almost like people want the actor to be as close to the character as possible in terms of those two worlds merging. But Sabrina and I are so different. Sabrina has like 4 years of training to be a police officer physically, like gun training, running, jumping, chasing people. I am the mother to a 2.5-year-old, and I will tell you, like those physical scenes, I'm just like, oh man, okay, here we go. Like, they're not my favorite by any means. I will do my best to get to the gym and train so I can be in them as honestly as this person would, but that's the job. That's not like I don't show up every day. Like, I haven't had the training a police officer has. I think also like the navigation of her experience coming from a second generation family where I was born in India. So trying to figure out, what did her family life look like when her father was born in Surrey, when her father is from BC, whereas for me, I had to learn English when I got here. It's like those things were a given for her. So finding that amalgamation of where we meet each other. And sometimes it's close, and I find that the places that it's closest is, Sabrina and I share the same heart. We share the same outlook on like what is right, what is wrong, reaching somebody, trying to understand them. We kind of hurt in the same places, I find, but in terms of like physicality, in terms of upbringing, in terms of training, like I didn't even play sports growing up. Yeah, it's not, listen, it's, if I didn't have the training, it wouldn't be pretty. So,
That's hilarious. I love that. A very real anecdote. So I want to ask you this. For those people who haven't watched seasons 1 and 2, and now we're going into season 3, let's encourage them to watch 1 and 2 and 3. Can you share just overarchingly what they should expect to experience in each of the three? Because obviously, the first one is foundational, and then we kind of play into a journey from there. And now, where are we with
yeah.
your character? And I think the best way to maybe describe that is through your character's lens.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that what I was most intrigued by was this incident that had happened to Ajit Sohal at the beginning of season 1, where he, he's in a very high level position within the political realm, and then he's charged with treason. and his daughter, who has been training to be a CFPC officer. The day that she's graduating and he's giving the speech to his ceremony is the day that he's arrested in front of everybody, and the fallout from that. So season one was really about trying to figure out who did this to him, and was he guilty? Is my father the man that I believe I know, or is he a stranger to me, and did he actually do this act that he has been charged with? And so season one takes us through Sabrina's journey with her father and also trying to find out who's responsible. By the end of season one, we know who the villain is. We know, and we know the reasons why, I think, to a certain extent. And so as we go into season two, it's about bringing this to light. And season two, I feel, is also a lot of Sabrina being on her own, navigating so much in secrecy, and also, friendships and romances that develop in secrecy. And she's a bit of a lone wolf, and by the end of the season puts herself in quite a lot of danger in order to try to get her own way, which she believes she's very much the type of individual who believes it's my way or the highway. And by the end of season two, it's her team, it's her partners who end up saving her. And so when we start season three, everything is out in the open. Sabrina, at the end of episode two, has laid down her badge and said, if the force is going to function in this way, then I can't be a part of it. And so when we meet her in season three, she has the choice of coming back. And the reason she comes back is not for herself this time, but for the people that she works for the people that she works with, rather, her partner. And so season three is really about, now that everything's in the open, finding the people that she trusts and learning what it means to work together in this organization. And, somebody said it to me the other day, and it really stuck with me. They said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And season three is really about Sabrina finding her people. And she's a little bit softer this season, I feel like season one and two, we saw an angry Sabrina with a cross to burn, or whatever that saying is, to bear, or whatever. And I think season three, there's some healing that's starting to happen. There's some openings in places, and then there's also this sort of burgeoning romance between her and her partner, which she really doesn't understand in the face of her actual relationship with Nate. And so we open up into those areas of her life a little bit more too.
Why should people watch this series? I want to close off with that. What is it about this that you feel is different from the experiences of other shows like this? Well, in fact, there isn't even a show like this. I correct myself.
Yeah, I think that you could equate it to a police procedural, but I think what Allegiance does is that we very much showcase the places where the police system is broken and the individuals functioning inside of it, despite some of its setbacks, despite some of its failures. But I really think right now, in this conversation that's happening out there between Canada and our neighbors to the south, and really, like, what does it mean to be Canadian right now? What are our Canadian values? I don't know that there's another show out there that really showcases what's happening in Canada. Particularly within the season, we go into the gun issues that we have in Canada and the fact that so many of our guns are coming from south of the border. We talk about forced and coerced sterilization of Indigenous women, which is an ongoing issue in this country. We talk about the cartel that exists in the Lower Mainland, and I didn't even know until we shot season three that was a prevalent issue. And so I think that if you want to know this country better, if you want to know who we are, if you want to know some of the stories that are happening in your own backyard, and if you're looking for storytelling that isn't black and white, and you're open to nuance as an audience member and individual, then I would watch this show.
Supinder, thank you so much for this beautiful, Deep, insightful conversation, my darling. Your work in Allegiance is powerful, it's intentional, and emotionally resonant. It's also a gift to see a South Asian woman leading a story with such authenticity and depth. You're not just portraying a character, sweetheart, not from my perspective. You're expanding what representation looks like, what Canada looks like, and what it feels like, and what it makes us feel is possible for us, especially for the next generation. So thank you for that. To
Oh,
everyone.
Raj, that's so powerful.
No, honestly, sweetheart, your final thoughts on that. I cut you off and I don't want to.
No, it's just so powerful to hear. It's the, like I feel like when we shoot the show, we're inside it, but to see how it's moving us forward, one step, one season, one storyline at a time. It's yeah, thank you for that. It's a true honor to be on this side of it, because I didn't think that I would be here, and so to represent this community and tell these stories, and to be the face of Allegiance and what it means for young women watching this show and seeing what's possible for themselves. Yeah, I have so much gratitude and so much excitement, I think, for that future generation. Oh, I forgot to mention, Raj, there's
Yes.
a Bhangra episode that's an all-women Bhangra team, and we had 16 South Asian young women on set at different times, whether they're Bhangra dancers or whether they were the guest stars. And it was such an amazing episode to get all of this wonderful young energy, and just I could see the futures of these young women as they come onto this show and then shoot out into the universe and do their next episodes of this or whatever. And so, yeah, to have a place in that world, it just means so much.
Oh my God. I'm so excited to see that episode. I've seen, season one, season two, and, thank you so much, Supinder. I want to kind of close off just to invite everyone watching and listening. Please, if you haven't already watched seasons 1 and 2, I really encourage you to do so, because then diving into season 3 will make so much more sense to you. It's airing January the 7th at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on CBC Gem, and it's going to be followed up on broadcast on CBC TV at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. Go watch Allegiance and support stories that push cultural representation forward, and support the artists who are redefining the landscape of storytelling, like my girl, Supinder. My darling, I appreciate you, I celebrate you, and I cannot wait to see what you do next. Thank you for joining me, my love.
Thank you so much for the conversation, Raj.
Business as usual is the best way we have to express our faith in your integrity.
I thought you handed in your badge.
You ready to do this?
Hope not to see either of you here again.
This institution is changing.
It's about time.
Half of them think that I personally got Campbell suspended.
Yeah, well, it's hard to tell whose side you're on these days.
The CFPC dropped the ball, and I will make sure that that doesn't happen again.
I was brought here to be a partner. Partners need trust. Are you with us?
Copy, we're on our way.
There is violence everywhere.
He's still at large, and he's escalating.
It would have been impossible to accomplish all this alone.
Well, this wasn't on my bingo card.
Don't underestimate anyone you encounter in the field.
She can do this. We'll have her back.
When you think it's over, that's when it gets dangerous.
We want to find the person who did this so it doesn't happen again.
Stop!
She's not the only one on this crusade. I had to kill him.
You gave me no choice.
Fall back, fall back. Just drop the knife and everyone walks away.
Without a confession or concrete evidence, you have nothing.
One last time. Are you with us?
I didn't come this far
CBC, show me your hands!
to only come this far.